The SMG is one of the most widely used type of weapon in Battlebit Remastered. Their low recoil and high fire rate make them extremely agile, as well as their quick reload. Nah, I'm just playing. We aren't doing this type of intro for a tier list. What's going on, guys? We're doing the tier list for the SMGs. I've made a build guide on almost all of these guns. The MP5 build guide will be coming out next. And I won't be doing a build guide on the Scorpion Evo or the PP2000, and I'll kind of explain why in this tier list. First, let's go with the Vector. This one's probably pretty obvious. This is going to be God tier. Fastest fire rate out of all SMGs. Virtually no recoil and a slightly above average damage. I mean, quick reload speed with the V25 URK and everything. It feels great. It's a laser beam. It's amazing. God tier SMG for sure. Next, let's come over to the MP5. This is actually going to be an A tier. The MP5 has a slightly over average damage with an average fire rate and a higher than average velocity, an average recoil. It's good, but it's not like amazing like the Vector. It's a really good gun, but using it, I don't think I can put it in God tier. Its fire rate is just a little too much slower than the Vectors, I think. The damage difference doesn't make up for it. So I'm gonna put it in A tier. Now let's look at the UMP45. The UMP45 is going to be in B tier. The UMP45 I kind of consider like the stepchild or the stepbrother of the MP5. Got one of the highest, actually it has the highest damage of all SMGs, but it's got the lowest fire rate of all SMGs, so it's a really big trade-off, you know what I mean? So it doesn't really help it, but it doesn't hurt it, you know what I mean? Just a different type of SMG in that regard. It does have a little recoil and pretty good reload speed, but I don't know, it just feels like a B tier when you play with it. It's not like you're feeling amazing with it, but you don't feel like shit with it, you know, it's kind of just in the middle of the road. Now let's look at one of my favorite SMGs, the PP19. The PP19 is actually going to be God tier, and a lot of people may not expect this, but I'm putting it in God tier. It's got the second highest damage of all SMGs, average, maybe above average fire rate, pretty low recoil, and one of the quickest reloads without the B25 URK attachment. You can just use a quick mag on this thing and it'll have an under 3-second reload speed. You don't have to use the B25 URK. You can instead use something else that helps vertical recoil even more, which is insane for an SMG. The reload speed is quick on this guy, and it feels amazing to play with. The second highest damage with a slightly above or average fire rate makes this thing a killer. Amazing. I would almost put it above the Vector actually, because it's just so good. Like, you're not having to hit as many bullets with the PP19 as you are with the Vector. That's how high the damage is for the Vectors. Fire rate may not be as high, but you only have to hit 4 or 5 bullets with this thing, whereas this one you have to hit more. So I actually put the PP19 over the Vector. I think it's the best SMG in the game, pretty much. Alright, now let's look at the Scorpion Evo. Now, the reason I'm not going to be making a build guide video on the Scorpion Evo is because it's hot trash. It's just complete garbage. It is terrible. It's no fun to play with. It is awful. It is tied with the Vector for the highest fire rate, and the damage is about the same, but it's got no attachment slots, basically. You can put an underbarrel on it, a sight, and a laser. That's it. You can't change the magazine. You can't put a barrel on it. And because of that, the ridiculously high vertical recoil that it has can only be minimally reduced. You cannot get it below 2 vertical recoil. This thing kicks like a mule. It is insane. It's so hard to control. You basically have to use it in burst mode, which completely defeats the purpose of having this tied for being the highest fire rate. It's terrible. And it's got a slightly slower reload speed as well. So it's 100% hot trash. This thing sucks. Don't even use it. It takes getting to level 150 to even unlock it, which is like, you know, a lot of time playing. And once you get it and you're like, oh, I finally unlocked it, I'm going to use it. And then you try and use it and it's just terrible. It's the recoil is uncontrollable. And you're like, okay, maybe I can just put some attachments on it. So you get some kills with it, and then you look at the attachments and you realize you can't put a barrel. So you can put an underbarrel. You put the underbarrel on that reduces the vertical the most, which is the vertical grip. And it still doesn't fix the insane vertical recoil that it has. It feels no different. It's still terrible to play with. So 100% hot trash. I hate this thing. Now let's do the P90. P90 is actually gonna be in God tier, and I almost want to put it over the Vector as well. The Vector is kind of fallen from grace. Like, this thing's great, but the P90 is almost better than it. I mean, the P90 has the highest magazine out of all the SMGs. It has a slightly above average fire rate, pretty average damage for all SMGs, very low recoil, but it doesn't have much room for attachments though. You can only put a sight, a barrel, and a main and a side rail on it. You can't put an underbarrel. And you can change the magazine though. So it does have more room than the Scorpion Evo. It's great. I think it's basically the second best SMG. These two are very close together, I think, in terms of ranking. The PP19 is definitely above both of them for me, but the P90 could go either way. I think the large magazine, 50 bullets, makes it better than the Vector, because it's just, you can spray into a pack of people with 50 bullets and kill all of them and have no issues. Whereas the Vector, you're gonna get 2, maybe 3 of them, and then you're gonna have to reload, and there might be more standing there where you were just shooting. So the PP19 kind of gets the advantage in that regard, which is nice. Now let's go to the PP2000. Now the reason I'm not making a video on the PP2000 is for the same reason as the Scorpion Evo, pretty much. There's no modability. Put a sight, a laser, and a suppressor. The only barrel options you have for this gun is a short and long suppressor, and that's it. And they're not even very worth using because they increase your recoil even further. The PP2000 is gonna go in C tier. It's not completely hot trash. The recoil is manageable. It is a little higher than most SMGs, but it does have a higher fire rate than most SMGs. It has like the second fastest, I think, fire rate. But it does also have one of the lowest damages of SMGs. It's about the same as the Vector, but the Vector has a higher fire rate and is completely moddable. So the PP2000 is kind of like, it's not complete trash. It's viable, but it's not really great either. It's not too good. So it goes in C tier for sure. Now let's look at the MP7. MP7 is the first SMG you unlock, the first one you get access to. And being the first SMG you have access to, it's very beginner friendly. And it's pretty middle of the road, so it's actually going to be in B tier. The MP7 is pretty much average on everything, fire rate, damage, recoil, but it's very agile and it's really good to play with, especially as the first SMG you get. So that's why it gets to go in B tier, because once you unlock like the PP19, the P90, the Vector, the MP5, you're going to be using all of those more. I think the MP7 would actually go above the MP45, just because it just feels a little better to play with, more agile. But yeah, it's B tier for sure. And here's the last one. Wait a minute, this isn't an SMG, this is an AR. Why is the F2000 on this tier list?
Charlie.
Well, because it's got one of the lowest damages of all the ARs and one of the fastest fire rates of all the ARs, as well as almost non-existent recoil. It feels like an SMG through and through. It does not feel like an AR at all. It feels good to play with mostly, but it doesn't feel right. Like, it doesn't seem like it should be the way it's set up. Like, the fire rate seems too high or the damage seems too low. I think it definitely needs to be reworked. Definitely like higher damage and slightly lower fire rate make this thing an actual AR and make it feel like an AR, but playing with it does feel good, but it also feels kind of weird. Because it takes quite a few bullets to kill somebody, and it's supposed to be an AR, you know? With all that said, it's actually not that bad. It's pretty middle of the road, I would say. I would choose the MP7 and the MP45 over it for sure. It is fun to play with, but, you know, it doesn't feel right. They need to rework it. They need to increase the damage a good bit and lower the fire rate slightly, I think, to make this thing an actual AR and make it feel proper. But right now, I see it as an SMG completely. So it's going on the SMG tier list. And there it is. That's the tier list. This is the definitive guide on what SMGs are the best. Do not stray from this tier list. No, I'm just playing. Obviously, whatever you want to play with, you can play with. It's completely your choice, whatever you like to play with the most. But this is my opinion on the ranking of the SMGs in the game. So yeah, there you go. I hope this list helps somebody at least. I mean, I have quite a few hours in the game at this point, and a lot of that time is spent with SMGs. Considerably more time with SMGs than any other gun type. So I have played with every single one of these guns for extended time. If you guys want to support me, consider liking or subscribing, and let me know down below what kind of guns you want to see me do guides on after I do the MP5, because that's the last SMG I'm going to be doing a guide on. And until next time, see ya.